changes in Muslim personal law by getting together both Muslim intellectuals at one level and Muslim women at another level. And the Tehreek-e-Nisba, which was formed in February 1994, which is affiliated to the All India Progressive Women's Association, has been arguing for changes within the boundaries of Islam. And it's an important case study for people who are into this debate about changes in personal laws and equal rights, and whether the state should intervene or should the community intervene, and the fact that before the 86 Shabana case, there were not that many Muslim organizations, the women's organizations. So I've been trying to make a comparative study of everything Islam with the Awaz-e-Islam, which is affiliated to the CPI, and which came up around 1987. Significantly, the role models that are held out to Bihari Muslim span a period of 1400 years from Rasool ka daur se lekar khilafat ka zamana, and includes Baitani that Musliman khawateen ke parte ka tarah ke hain, that they have in out of the field, in the battlefield in Muhammad's time, and now they've been taking part in various struggles, as for example in the Manitoba people, which they have to face the brunt of it. But the initial focus was on retrieving ijtihad, that is reinterpreting the Sharia by women. That seems to have fallen at the wayside. And now what the Bihar Intellectual Forum, Muslim Intellectual Forum, has put together a bill which is slated to be presented in Parliament by APA, through APA, which is trying to get past triple talaq by opting for another kind of talaq to stagger for a period of 3 months.
The latest book suggests that all of them are not Biharis. And just because they happen to be Urdu speaking, they have been a tendency to describe them as Bihari. They could be from other parts of the country also. Second thing is, most of them don't want to be called Biharis, despite the fact that the others call them Biharis. They do not relate to Bihar. And which is not surprising, considering that the identity of Bihar, Bihari identity, such as it is premised on a long history. Whereas the idea of Pakistan cannot have that long history around it. So it cannot relate to, for instance, the modern period or the period of Akbar or to the period of even the army. So therefore, these people would like to be called Mohammedans. But then Oscar Wilde's book, work on Mohammedans of Karachi, suggests that while they call themselves Bihari, they call themselves Muhajir there, they nevertheless look back to some imaginary homeland where they felt comfortable. Now, this imaginary homeland is Bihar. They do not so much use Bihar. Now, why? Because Bihar, in a certain sense, has this goodness of personality, which allows them to relate to when they are away and when they are relatively settled. So this, I wonder if you come across.
Yes, I did.
But can I just come? The two other small observations that I have. One is that in the area of Sitamarhi, Muzaffarpur and Darbhanga, which are around 30-35% Muslims in certain pockets, there has been very little migration, out-migration to Pakistan or Bangladesh. In fact, there was much greater migration from areas which are lesser Muslim populations more to Bangladesh, what became Bangladesh. I would say more to Bengal and then East Bengal, which became East Pakistan and then Bangladesh, than towards the west. And this again I would relate somewhat to a cultural phenomenon and some kind of a mental barrier about traveling to the west. Traveling to the east is always a little easier. And Calcutta was of course the bigger draw, and then Calcutta city was Dhaka. So fairly large number of people went there. Third is the East Bengali refugees of Bihari origin who are now in settlement camps in Bihar. Many of them Hindu, but not all of them Hindu. There are several who are Muslims who come back and who are in settlement camps. Katinka is working on some of those. So that's third. Fourth is, I still wonder why, in spite of the 1946 massacres and killings which took place, why more substantial migration did not take place from Bihar. The railways offices and some government offices, they did go. But by and large, there was no exodus. Unlike, say, from Punjab or from Uttar Pradesh, Western Uttar Pradesh. I wonder why. Was it because of the particular nature of Islam here, a particular relationship between the Hindus and Muslims, maybe a back-to-back existence of communities, which was usually non-antagonistic, perhaps, or what? Fifth, on the question of the backward Muslims. Surely the movement started with Abdul Qayyum Ansari, well before the border. In fact, during the independence movement itself, when the movement from Bihar asserted their separateness from the Sheikhs and Ayahs. And therefore, isn't being Muslim in Bihar perhaps close to being a caste or a set of castes than being a religion? And finally, in 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished, just 10 days after that, the ITF was abolished. Our ITF wasn't abolished, the CPI came over there. So there was no question at that stage of a debate taking place about having a Muslim organization or non-Muslim organization within the ITF framework. So there are facts there.
This is from the 19th and this is the Chittiya Rashtriya Sammelan report conference of the Convention in 1990. There was a debate. So I'm going by that. So I don't know. Okay. Now, not all Biharis, not all migrants leave Pakistan and Bihari, but there's also this finding by a scholar from Pakistan who's working on Muhajirin that Biharis who migrated either to East Pakistan or to West Pakistan were not called Muhajirin, they were just called Biharis. Okay, and in fact they presented it at that point of time. Oscar was working about how the very term has changed over time and how it's deployed has been changing over time. So at one point of time, they were just called Biharis, and I believe it is because of the older bridge of migration from Bihar and Saran to Calcutta, dock area, they don't want to be called Biharis is something which again has changed over time. Because if they don't want to be called Biharis, and Benazir Bhutto, for example, wanted to delete their entire historical experience and call them just Bangladeshi Biharis and not Pakistan. And the way it happened was that after 46 RAD, there was two strands of migration. One to the refugee camps in Assamford, Bardwan and Calcutta, and the other, which is a smaller number of about 1,000 Biharis who were given tickets to go to Sindh January 1947. So a lot of people who moved to Calcutta, Bardwan and Assamford were wondering which way they should go. And when they moved closer to what then became the border and wrote these agonized letters to them, dawn and morning views and stuff like that, people think that what must be alive in these camps and not living across East Pakistan. So there was a Bengali Bihari feeling in 1947 itself and denied to go across the Dhaka and specifically made people to be entitled to this to Pakistan that we did it for the minorities of India, and you can't say that, Pakhtunistan is for Pathans and, East Pakistan is for Bengalis and stuff like that. So, at times, I've come across a lot of people who have interviewed and who are twice in private saying that why should we erase we are that there are people who are stuck there and maybe come here is because of the fact that we've had a different kind of immigrant experience in the sense that we've been living in the slums of Purangi and Arangi. And also a lot of them say that Bihari तो एक कैफियत है. It's a state of mind. You know, so a lot of work could be done on that. You know, the looseness and the image that people have of Bihar. But it's just these are rules. I mean, a lot of people in Pakistan who are willing to talk about it, and you know, the different strands of migration from starting from 47, then 50s, then 71, and subsequently the plot went overground, across India. And you know, some did come and settle here as well. But there's a lot of people, out of the 5 lakhs who were in the camps, they're just around 2 lakhs now. Now, why was there not a more substantial migration to Pakistan from Bihar, despite the dimensions in 1926, right? That's something which I left out, is that part of my work is about the fact that the Pakistan movement was contested in Bihar as early as April 1940, just a few weeks after the Lahore resolution was passed, precisely on the grounds that it's not going to get anything for Muslims from the Aqaliyat Suba, that is minority provinces. And this kind of a stand was taken by 2 organizations. One, the Muslim Independent Party, which had been quoted by the Imarat-e-Sharia, Jamiatul Ulama Hind Foundation. And they had been contesting the Pakistan movement as soon as early as April 1940. And yes, of course, the movement conference like Abdul Qayyum Ansari as well. In fact, there's one thing which is worth looking at, and I've done work on the movement conference pre-47 as well.
Towards those Muslims who haven't gone to Pakistan, present-day Pakistan, is that they say that they are not Biharis, and they claim very much for themselves that they are the new Biharis. They have the same identity problem of what they are, but they are not even calling themselves anymore Bengali-speaking Biharis, which used to be, I mean, for a long time in history, their identity. But now at the moment in Bethia, they say, no, we are Biharis. But Muslims who say haven't gone there, they are not Biharis, and they should be about it. So it's also a denying of the identity of being Bihari, which might influence their own, I mean, their identity. That they might claim that identity, but they might be denied that identity.
It's also when they're appealing to the UN or the Rabita al-Alam al-Islam, then they position themselves as the Muslim refugee. But in the United Nations, it's called refugees. The Pakistan government is Muhajir. Not Muhajir, but Pakistan.
If that is all, then we move to...
I just wanted to ask one question. All the Urdu speaking migrants are referred as Bihari, or why they are? Is the migration from Bihar maximum?
It was
That is
two weeks, yes.
But no.
But there were several, Muhammadis going to Karachi.
But they are also referred as.
Also, and in fact, Umar Qureshi has been working on that. There seems to be a hierarchy of migrants because some are called Muhammadis and others are called just plain Muhammadis. Which is, in a sense, a carryover of a demarcatedness that was noticed between people from UP and Bihar pre-47. So within the Muhajir community too, very often, people say that, हम तो UP वाले हैं तो Bihar से. With all the loaded.
Malabaris are not called Muhajir. Malabaris are called Malabaris.
Yeah.
Where Hyderabadis are called Muhajir. And UP people are called Muhajir.
They have named about it themselves.
So what distinguishes there is, I think, a kind of class or skill. Biharis and Malabaris are being at the bottom end.
Right.
But it is true that it has got a in the society, and because they are not well off and they have migrated to the west or east Pakistan, whatever it is. But all these kinds of people, they are referred to as Biharis.
they refer to
same
Bihari.
in Punjab where Oriya the referred to as Bihari, Oriya laborers are referred to as Bihari.
Because it is not in case of East Pakistan only, even in West Pakistan.
Yes, sir.
He is a Bihari.
So his question is whether it is used as a pejorative term or?
Yes, it has got a pejorative connotation.
Documented those human rights violations and taken to amnesty. Number one. Number two, you see, apart from the Bihari Muslims being taken in terrorist and there are also Ahmadiyas, you see, they are also looked from the point of view of things like that. So, has there been any interface between the Mohajirs and the Ahmadiyas in their common studies? That is the second. And third is, you see, is it that Punjabi Muslims, you see, they have the hegemony and therefore it is their definition of the situation that you see towards the true Muslims and therefore you see it is their definition which they replace them as Muhammadis discrimination.
In fact, a human rights case has been made out by the MQM overseas branch, and that's what they've been concentrating on, that the killing or the fact that these people are lying in, unrepatriated in various camps in Bangladesh is a proof of the fact that the Mohajir nation, adding up to 22 million, should be making out a human rights case. And that's the angle that's taken even when they are liaising with senators, both Republican as well as the Democrats. It's nothing but a human rights case, and Amnesty has taken it up time and again. We haven't got to that already an idea. And it's not a question of Punjabi saying that they're better Muslims. But it's just that, it has something to do with the history of the equations between different nationalities within Pakistan. And the fact that Muhajirs are no longer that predominant.
And also, the second question I want to know is what are the numbers that migrated and who were named beneficiaries in terms of land acquisition? For example, is it be right to say that the others for example, in the area of around Bihar, for example, who go over to land, what exactly is what happened exactly in what setting?
There was a huge migration, totaling about 60,000 or so by January 1947 to Calcutta, Burdwan and Asansol. But there was a bigger migration in 47, between 47 and 51. And according to available figures, the total is around 700,000, but I think can't go by this figures usually. And the people who migrated to the east were people who couldn't pay their way through to the west. And so they were not just really off-field, but people who work in the central services, the postal services, the guardsmen, lines, and some rickshawalas, and don't like
So all of these who even now continues to come back to Patna to meet her grandmother who is still here, or they come back to like marriages and so on. So on the one hand, there could be still sort of some antagonistic aspects of which may be made, but there could also be some other kind of social, maybe more positive and happier sort of positive relationship with country. It also depends on a lot of who comes back here all the time, but I've been told by many of my friends that whenever the drawing room conversation starts, either in the East or in the UK or in the US or Canada about the partition, things suddenly freeze. And I've noticed that myself. If I were to be meeting some Bihari people in Pakistan and Karachi and then in the house of the person who stayed on in Bihar. After a certain point of time, maybe the Apo Kerala one again, and the other people saying, I'm the language, Apo Kerala. There was a lot of judgmentalism about choices made in terms of migrating or not migrating at that point of time. And retrospective uses of so this is Vivek.
चारा घोटाला, राजनीति का राजत्व, यानी कहीं से कोई सकारात्मक तस्वीर उभरती है बिहार की। बिहार की सांस्कृतिक विरासत, यहाँ की संगीत की विरासत, इन सभी चीजों के बारे में बहुत कम जानकारी है।
किशन नरसंहार ने एक दफा फिर राज्य की जर्जर कानून व्यवस्था के खिलाफ काम खींचा है। राज्य में इस साल नरसंहारों की वारदातों में
the way they have strengthened in Bihar and the Nolia who were also senior of Baladal give a great light on the modern Bihar. And I was very sad to read in the paper of what was driving Yes, I was so at ease to read that in the paper. There is a singer whose name is Lawrence Singer. And thinking that Greek was such a prestigious text in the medieval time, and now it's used for harming, and so I was shocked. So then, after these epics, we have the Nat epics and the Russian epics. After this, we have a third category of epics, which were brought by traders and which reflect, like the Rajput epics, the migration of population from Western India to Bihar and from Bihar to the Nepali, Terai and Bengal. These epics are sung by Kedi, Banura, Nat or Nolia singers. And you have the epics of Bihula, and Shobha Mayaka Bandara and Kirni. Now I must say a few words about the migration of Biharis to Bengal. To Bengal, several kinds of trade were undertaken by the Biharis through the Ganga River, bringing those animals to Bengal, and they were linked with the transmission of oral traditions through this way also. But a point to make that the main trade was neither timber nor beer. The main trade, in fact, was the selling of arms. And you must remember that salpeter was extracted from Bihar. And with that, gunpowder and arms were prepared. So the migration of the Biharis to Bengal and the export of the Bihari culture was also linked in a narrow way to the trade of arms. And its decline also, when after the Second World War, when the Europeans stopped buying salpeter from Bihar. So the wealth of Bihar relied on the trade of arms and the transmission of oral tradition because also relying on this trade. Well, after this, the second data, we in France we study the fourth category, which is the Muslim tradition of Kita or Remakam, which was linked to the several silsilas of Bihar. You know that you cannot, you could not have a good approach of Bihar if you were ignoring the influence of those Sufi silsilas which came from the 12th century, from Yemen, from Arabic countries, from Iran or Afghanistan. And they have given birth to very rich texts also and very bright schools also, which count in the Bihari literature. And such silsilas as Shatari, Kadiri, Surawadi, Firdausi, Shishi or Madari are very important if you want to understand also So we are studying the most important of them, which are, well, as you know, the 12 thoughts of Islam. Then we also study the writings of Kazina Lakshakari, whose dargah is in Vaishali, because we were thinking of going to Vaishali. If you happen to go to Vaishali with all the group, don't miss the grave of Kazina Lakshakari, because it has a special architecture. It's an ancient stupa, Buddhist stupa, only the Muslim dargah is this. So you not only see the Ashoka pillar in Vaishali, but other styles of Bihari culture and the Suravati, to represent the Suravati doctrine. And then we have the mausoleum of Yavan Yati. He was a disciple of Shamadar from Syria, and he represents the Madari Sufi school of thought, and his dargah is at Hilsa. Of course, if you have opportunity of going to Hilsa to visit the dargah of the disciple of Shamadar, it's also an important place of Bihari culture. Well, if you may allow me, after this presentation, I have selected a small passage of one of these gathas that we are studying with the students, and I think I like it because it represents the beauty and richness of the Bhojpuri style. Bhojpuri style is somewhat perhaps terse, but very sober and very different from all that what you can read on the Krishnite literature with Gopi, Dahi, and so, and romanticism. No, in the Bhojpuri literature, you have the spirit of mysticism and the influence of Shivaite yoga, which is very important. So I have chosen a passage, very famous passage of the renouncement of King Bhattacharya. Jagme Amar Raja Bhattari, Karana Likha Veilal. Meri Kaske Jagma Aile, Meri Maya Ki Jangal. Ahiri Gudari, Raja Ramkechalele, To Rani Gudari Dhai Thai. So I will translate for those who either don't understand nor understand my Bhojpuri, which may happen. So it is, in the world there was an immortal king, Raja Bhattari, but in his hand the fate of renouncer was written. We come to the world saying, that's mine, but saying this is mine is only a trick of the Maya. So when the king was ready to leave his palace, having been wearing the dress of the renouncer, the Gudri, the queen held him by his Gudri, by his costume of renouncer, and she stands in front of him and trying to stop him from renouncing. So now, if you want to know whether this Bhattacharya king has been successful in renouncing, you just come to my course So now we come to the Bhojpuri printed literary corpus, because that's the first part of this study are the Bhojpuri medieval gathas. But of course there is also a modern literature in Bhojpuri that we are studying. And along with the Bhojpuri chapbooks, because I think I give also great importance to that literature we call pavement literature. But in those chapbooks, you have all the spirit of the medieval gathas. So we study those printed chapbooks. And we also study the sant literature of Bihar, like Palki Saheb, Bika Saheb, or Daria Saheb. We study also Bhojpuri novels, those novels of Sanjay Kapil, for instance, which are perhaps your most famous writer. And we study the plays of Bihari Thakur and Rahul Sankritaya. Well, for Bihari Thakur, I need not explaining much to you, because yesterday you have seen some extract of Bihari Thakur's play, and you will see tomorrow. I know that you will see tomorrow a performance of this play. You'll be lucky. I'm sorry I'll miss it. But for Rahul Sankrityayan, I'd like to say a few words because you may have heard his name yesterday in the speech of Mr. Kuwajima when he spoke about Bihar in the Second World War. He mentioned the name of Rahul Sankrityayan. I don't know if you have noticed, but that character is very important for the promotion of the Bhojpuri language. He was amongst the father of the Bhojpuri language and the Bhojpuri movement. And he has written, he was one of the first who has played theater plays. He wrote 8 theater plays in Bhojpuri. And if I have time, if the chairperson allows me, I'd like to say a few words on the visit of Gandhi in Bihar. I am little troubled because everybody speaks on the consensus approach of the visit of Gandhi in Bihar. But those who study the Bhojpuri movement know that the visit of Gandhi was the opportunity for the Bihari people to request importance even to the Bhojpuri language, and they were very angry against the visit of Gandhi, and they told him that please pay attention to our request, and if you don't, you should be careful because we exist, and you are going to swallow us with your nationalism, you are going to swallow the Bhojpuri language, and you are going to give Hindi to all of us. We don't want. So many leaders were very hostile to the coming of Gandhi at that time in the 1920s, and not so recently. Well, it's not perhaps the time. So, along with the story of text, as I told you, we give much attention to the history of the printer, the material support of literary tradition. The printers who have contributed to the transmission of Bihari culture. And we are studying the dynasties of Bihari printers. This is left Bihari printers from Patna, Fatua, Mungir, or Mokaba, and even the printers of Calcutta and the printers of Viratnagar in Nepal. Those printers like, you may know of course, Narayan and Co. in Salimpur, in Patna, or printers like Janaki Prakashan from Italy. Very important printer is Nagendra Prasad Singh of the Jaya Durga Press in Nayatola in Patna. But also printers of Calcutta, you must know, play a great role for the Bihari culture. So, for instance, Loknath Pustakalai, Bholanath Pustakalai, they print a lot of Bihari chapbooks and books. And in Viratnagar, you have the Bhojpuri family, the Mishra, who play also a great role in the diffusion of Bihari culture. They are from doctors. They are doctors in Ayurvedic medicine, but they also have a bookshop and printing press. Well, now, not only do we pay attention to the printers and their work, but also to all the printing of the academy. We think that it's very important to know the work of the local academy, and we collect all the documents published and transmitted by these academies, such as the Bhojpuri Academy of Patna, of course, and the work done by the Akhil Bharti Bhojpuri Sahitya Sammelan, and also the Vishva Bhojpuri Sahitya Sammelan of Patna. Well, now I will stop here for the Bhojpuri literature and say a few words, very few words, about the Maithili literature. And we have chosen to focus on Bhojpuri literature because, after all, the Maithili literature is fairly well known of the European scholars because of the name of Vidyapati, and Vidyapati is well published. So we think it's more urgent that to study the poetry of, castes like the Dusad and the contributions of the Dusad people. For instance, Dusad of Mokama, they have a very rich tradition of epics, such as the epic of Salhes Suharman. So, and there is another tradition also in Palveya. I don't know if you know this place of Palveya near Manhar, not Maned, but Manhar. There is also a Nat tradition and epics of Janinas are being sung by Kondu people. So we prefer to study some real traditions than Bidabadi. Now I'm sorry to say, I have to say that concerning the Magari literature, no work is being done. And we also work together with the Maithili Academy of Patna, but and little with the Akhil Bharti Magari Bhashra Sammelan, but very little. And this will have efforts are still to be made, but that will be for the future. Well, now I don't have to oh my God, 5 minutes. Because in fact, I would like to tell you that these studies on the Bihar literary tradition are undertaken not only from a literary point of view, but also in relation to their spreading outside Bihar, that is mainly towards Nepal and Mauritius. And that will lead us to the question of the Bihari diaspora in Nepal and Mauritius. So I have to be have to shorten perhaps, but I would try to compare in a few words, compare the migrant traditions of the Bihari people in Nepal and Mauritius, because I studied and because also it takes quite different from an ancient one. And you have 3 main categories of population who form the bulk of the Bhojpuri migration, Bhojpuri and Maithili migration. You have the Bamiya traders, big merchants, traders of rice and tail, of course, oil. And those people, they offer the selling of newspaper or many diversified jobs. Then you have a second category of small peddlers, those who sell what we call in French pacotilles, small goods like mirrors, handkerchiefs, small jewelry, scissors that you find in the Nepali Terai and in Nepal. And finally, you have also the jute workers of the factories of the Terai. You still have in Biratnagar, you still have jute factories. They are about to be closed, there are big problems, but you still have many Bihari workers there. So these Biharis are to be found mainly in Biratnagar, Janakpur, Birganj, and with their coming to Nepal, not only the Bhojpuri and Maithili languages have become official languages of Nepal. You may know that since 1994 now, the 9 more languages than Nepali and Newari have become official, and Maithili and Bhojpuri are spoken in the Nepali radio every day. But not only are these languages have become official, but the Maithili and Bhojpuri repertoire, such as the Epic of Saleh or the plays of Bihari Thakur, are being performed there. Now I come to the migration of Bihari people to Mauritius. Whereas the Nepali migration of the Bihari people is ancient, the arrival of the Bihari migrants to Mauritius started in 1824. You know that the indentured Indian labor came to work in the sugarcane plantations after the abolition of slavery, when the French planters could not have the African slaves they were used to have. They have required the help of Indian labor. But 10 years after, in 1834, only 10 years after, the abolition of slavery was again proclaimed. It had been proclaimed the first time during the French Revolution, and it was again proclaimed in 1834. And then the Bihari were more and more numerous to come. And whereas the reputation of the Bihari entrepreneurs inside India is not so brilliant, many Bihari families have succeeded well in Mauritius and now belong to the political and economical elite of the island. Either Hindu Hindu like Hazari Singh family, Gudu, Bisundoyal, Ramgulal, or Muslim families like Osman or Kurunji. They all claim with proudness their Bihari origin. And you have, it's very common to see in Mauritius people like Vinesh Mukund Singh, who is the dean of the social science faculty, or Harish Boudou, who is the leader of the Left Party of Mauritius. They travel to India in order to find the village of origin of their ancestors in Bihar. And it's very easy to find archives on the immigration of Bihari people because they are kept in the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Mukha. So they have facilities to find the village of origin of their family. But not only are Bihari people very proud of their Indian origin, but they are also very active in a politics of transmission of their patrimoine. So some personalities, along with some institutions, are responsible for this situation. And among those personalities, the first one to be mentioned is of course that of Sarita Boudou. I was very pleased because on the very day of that conference, Dr. Satyanandan, one of the very first sentences he said was an allusion to Sarita Boudou and her role in the promotion of Bihari culture. I'd like to say a few words about her because she seems important. She was a member of the social and political organization, the Seva Shivir in Mauritius, whose aim was to make Mauritian Biharis aware of their Indian roots and also to help them not to give up the Indian languages they knew. Because you may know that in Guadeloupe and Martinique, in that anti-migration, the Indian people, they have forgotten their Indian language of origin, whereas with the work of people like Sarita, they have kept these languages. And it's the more easy to keep these languages that most of the migrants, and not only the people of Bihari origin, but even some Tamil families, all those migrants' mother tongue is Bhojpuri. And it's common to see in Mauritius a Tamil family who can't speak Tamil but only Bhojpuri. So another personality in Mauritius is that of Suchita Ramdin. You may have heard about her name. She's a scholar who has collected the Mauritius Bhojpuri repertoire of songs, riddles, games and stories. Now, among the institutions, we can mention the Mauritius Bhojpuri Institute, and of course, which is in Port Louis, and of course the Mahatma Gandhi Institute. So now, if the Bhojpuri language is so popular in Mauritius, it's for a peculiar reason. It's the popularity of the Bhojpuri song. Whereas I should say that, whereas in Bihar, the beauty and popularity of Bihari culture lies in the Bhojpuri Gathas, epics of the medieval times, which is still now transmitted. But in Mauritius, it's different. It's the popularity of the Bhojpuri song. And among the arguments used by the leaders of the Bihari culture, the idea that the Bhojpuri is a sweet language. You can hear that sentence very often in Mauritius. That Bhojpuri Sundar Ba. It's one of their mottos. And even there is a song that Bhojpuri Khub Joli Ba. So now this is very typical. We have Bhojpuri, Khub is Arabic, Joli is French, Creole, French Creole from Sundar, and Ba is of course the verb in Bhojpuri. And the Bhojpuri songs are present in the Mauritius life in two ways. First, the traditional songs. There is a group, a very famous group of singers that that people call for a Bihari wedding, the ladies of the Vallée des Prêtres, or these old ladies are called every wedding, they are called, and they will sing wedding songs of Bihar. But you have also other great singers like Sona Noyan, and also Freeman Laga. He's a Creole singer, but he has the Bhojpuri repertoire. That is to show the popularity of Bhojpuri repertoire. And you have on television, on Mauritius television, very often what we call the Bhojpuri Bahar, that is contest of Bhojpuri songs that people expect about every month. Not only you have traditional singers, but also modern groups like Bhojpuri melodies, and you have also Mira Moran. Mira Moran is a great Bhojpuri singer. She can sing semi-classical or light songs as well. But you have also pop singers like Bhojpuri Boy, Bhojpuri Lover, Bhojpuri Folk Sega. And the Bihari culture is mixed with the Creole Sega. Sega, that is the most popular dance and music. And in the same way, the Bihari Bhojpuri is there mixed with French and Creole. In the same way, but in a way which makes the Bhojpuri different perhaps from its partner form. In the same way, you have the sound of the Bhojpuri song mixed with Sega and Creole. And it can be heard all the islands. Non-celebration, and we will have a Bhojpuri boy for the I thought, am I dreaming? I heard the name Bhojpuri boy. No, it must not be true, because I came to Mauritius to see the influence of Bhojpuri culture, but I could not imagine. Then I bought the newspaper, and it was written for the Ganga clan, the Pandit so-and-so will come, and with the presence of the Bhojpuri boys. So I said, well, there is no doubt the Bhojpuri boys exist in Mauritius. And I attended the function, and I could also attend several orchestras by the group. So, of course, one must be aware that political motives are also hidden under this Bhojpuri fever of Mauritius. And also that the Bihari identity is maintained, well, it's also not, in order not to see the Tamil identity take too much advantage. And you know that you may know that Bihari of Mauritius, they insist on having red flags and sanctuaries of Hanuman in front of their doors. And each time the Tamil community, well, they do this because they say, we are not Tamil, we are from Bihar, and you can see it even before arriving, entering in our house, you can see that we are from Bihar. We only suggest that for the next ADRI conference, if you want to prepare another one, the next one, please do invite people of the Mauritian diaspora, and she also said Sarita Boudou and Suchita Randin will be, of course, quite welcome. But also perhaps some people representing the Muslim culture of Bihar. I think their presence also is perhaps missing. And I was thinking of Father Paul Jackson, who has been writing so much to the Sharafuddin Yahya Maneli and the writing of this medieval scholar of Bihar, and who is in the St. Xavier School of Patna. And also perhaps people to end with, don't say to end, people who have played a great role in the Bhojpuri movement, such as Pandit Sapir, of course, and Nagendra Prasad. I'd like to dedicate my talk to him. He's in Jayapola in his press, and of Jayapola press, and he has done a lot for the promotion of Bihari culture. So if you could invite next time, it would be very appreciated.
country or ancient India, and medieval studies are not given importance. And I think today comes from yesterday, and I think the influence of orientalism is so strong even among contemporary Indian scholars that they go to Buddha and then come to today. So I think it's very, very welcome that you do. And another little comment is that why Bhojpuri was given more importance in science studies was because Mauritius was a colony, French colony. Okay, no, that's right. More question that I am interested in about Kabir. You know that Kabir language, of course, is Bhojpuri, but also there is strong influence of Punjabi on Kabir's language, and it's been contested. And actually, Varanasi was the meeting point of the western kinds of Hindi and the eastern. Okay, what kind of Hindi is wrong word, but okay. Western groups of Hindi languages and Indian language. And Kabir is taken as to be sort of part of the Khadiburi tradition or the Western tradition very much. The second comment, sorry. Among the printers you're talking about, I thought Banaras played a very, very important role in printing about literature and
no, of course, but I focused only on Bihar.
Okay.
Bihar is, of course,
no, but you said Calcutta and Virajnagar, and so I thought making Banaras is very good.
No, yeah, Calcutta is the most famous printer of Varanasi for Bhojpuri, but no, not sure.
And thirdly, Bhojpuri tradition is Trinidad, and but there seems to be more of a dying culture than alive culture. People want to know more.
I don't think so. There is an economic economist in Meyer who is studying that tradition. She has published 2 volumes on the Bhojpuri tradition of Trinidad and Suriname. So no, it's quite lively, but
no, but Peggy's, this is Bhojpuri dying language in Trinidad. It's a language there.
No, according to Helen Mara studies, it's not. No, I don't think so. So I was not saying that Kabir has written in Bhojpuri. There is no proof of this, though there are little texts in Bhojpuri that are attributed. But I was just saying that it was the point of departure of reserve, that's all. But do you consider Kabir a Western
No. See, Banaras geographically, of course, Bhojpur, but Kabir's language has got so much of Goloknath influence and Nath tradition, and the Nath tradition has got so much of Western language influences. And Kabir was more influenced, and Kabir and Dadu, that. So in that sense, literally, Kabir moves more to the Western part of the Hindi group of languages that comes from the
No, all right. Concerning the Goloknath tradition, there is no proof also either that they come from the west or from the east. Something they come from Bengal.
So linguistically, I think it is very hard to explain.
I don't think that. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to come to your course next year. It's very interesting. I want to just one comment I want to make. It's quite interesting how you shift from Bihari to Bhojpuri. You almost seem to identify the two, and then of course include everything up to Varanasi as well. And anyway, it's quite interesting that you shift between the two. But I want to ask you is, will you be able to say anything about the difference in traditions in the, say, both the Nepali culture and the one in Mauritius? And the reason I'm asking is, well, there may be many reasons why the culture is different, but especially because the type of migration is different, I suppose. As you were saying, in Nepal, that the traders keep their shops in Bihar as well, whereas Mauritius, Bihar, the links were completely cut out. Although, of course, people go back to their roots now, but the type of migration is so different. So I wondered whether you can see that in whatever tradition is on.
Oh, it's quite different. One has nothing to do with the other. in Nepal, they keep on the Bihari tradition itself. You can hear a play of Bihari Kapoor, as you can hear it in Patna. It will be the same. Whereas in Mauritius, it will be a creation. It will be a Creole creation of Bihari culture. It has nothing to do one with the other. Mauritian people, they will be inspired by the Bihari folk songs and transform them and create something. But the Nepali people, they will reproduce exactly what is being sung or performed in Bihar.
And it's also in Nepal a male tradition, then, because it's only men.
Oh yes, only men who will perform Bihari Kapoor and Sayyid Jafar. But I must add also that in Nepal you may know that the Tharu people play also a role because they all speak Bhojpuri. So Tharu, the tribal people from the east of Nepal and west of Nepal, they speak Bhojpuri also, so they add a form of Bihari culture also. So those two migrations and two cultures, in fact, are very separate.
I too may be at your course next year. I have just a couple of small questions here. You were describing the trade between Bihar and two questions. You said rice is moved from Bihar to Nepal. Rice?
Right.
Yes, okay. And what were the
Not
other
to
things?
Nepal, not to Bengal.
Bengal, oh.
No, not to Nepal.
Well, these shops that are in...
But it's small quantity to Nepal, but in large by boat to Bengal, but only by bullock to Nepal. So
What comes from Nepal back to Bihar?
many things come from Tibet to Nepal, such as woolen things and carpets and yakse for carpets also, and musk also, and many goods come. Birds also? I did not know. I did understand. Many goods and stones also come from and jewels also. Coral, turquoise.
And this is going on now? And is this an old trade?
No, it's still going on, and you still can see feathers and bullock, even our horses here.
And this, but this trade goes on during the entire period of the literature you were studying. So we could see this in the 12th century as well. Thank you.
The Bhojpuri anxiety about Gandhi, which I found very interesting because there were also obviously political anxieties in that very same part of Bihar. But when you were talking about the songs and the gathas and the oral traditions, you had made reference to the idea of violence in the Bihar gathas, which was not found in others, and I wonder what time frame were you talking about? 16th century, 17th century, or 18th century? I wasn't getting a sense of time, and I just wondered when that phenomenon was.
Earlier, because this Al-Azhar corresponds to the Prithviraj battle, and it's 1190, so it's the end of the 12th century. And we also know that Logic is anterior to 18, can you say? 1349. 1349, 1949, we know also that the Bhojpuri ethic of Lori is previous to 1349 because there was a text by Mullah Daoud, a Sufi Prematian Chandayan, who was inspired by this Bhojpuri ethic. So we can trace it to the 14th century Loric and 12th century Alaudal. We can trace those dates owing to the Muslim. If we had not the Muslim sources, we could not know the exact time of the Bhojpuri language. Is there a question?
Thank you. Soft tradition of the Bhojpuri tradition and the ruggedness of the Bhojpuri tradition you have somehow missed. And this ruggedness, you see, is expressed in such terms as Aradina Ghorba, Kaaba Ke Dorba, and so that is also, you see, one of the important aspects of this Bhojpuri tradition and culture, along with which you see also goes this lumpenism. That is, you see, one aspect, and to what extent you find, you see, the diffusion of this, you see, at the global level, say either at Mauritius or at West Indies. So this is one point. Second is that, you see, Bhojpuri tradition itself, there are also, you see, subcultures. For example, caste division, you see, amongst the Bhojpuris. So that may have also variations, you see, in terms of contributing to the varieties in the Bhojpuri tradition. The third is that I am a little bit intrigued. You see, equating the Bhojpuri tradition culture with the Bihari culture. Because Bihari culture is much more composite. And so you have the Mathi tradition, and you have the Madhya tradition, then you have the tribal tradition, and therefore if one takes it politically, then I mean, what extent you would say that you say that this Bhojpuri tradition is a dominant ingredient of this Bihari culture, and things like that. So this is
perhaps just an argument I will use is that I have been going through Bihar from almost north to south and east to west, and never have I seen so much printed literature as in Bhojpuri. Never have I seen mighty literature books outside Mithila, whereas Bhojpuri books, Bhojpuri books, and books are also from different groups of culture, not only Oriental, and also Bhojpuri epics, Bhojpuri gathas, you can hear throughout Bihar, even in Maithili part of Bihar. Whereas the Maithili epic, you hardly get an opportunity of listening outside Mithila. So I think it's true that Mithila culture of course is rich, but it's very much inside Mithila. Whereas Bhojpuri culture, you can hear from Allahabad to Calcutta. So that's why also for me,
just a small point Mithila. Mithila itself is being defined in the geographical unit. Where it starts at the very end, definitely starts somewhere what is kind of so in that sense, the boundaries of India are fairly large. And similarly, the transmission of Maithili towards the west goes right up to basic French Bhasha. And there are traditions of that sort which move. There is a third tradition of the Maithili transmission right up to the Saraswats of Gujarat and Goa. And there is Kosambi says, for instance, that the Mangeshi temple in Goa traces its origin from the Munger temple and is carried by the Maithili migrants to that area. So there are all kinds of things. So these are very small points, not competitive linguistic linguistic. But on the issue of Rahul Sanjay intrigues me a bit because on the one side Rahul certainly was a Bhojpuri promoter of Bhojpuri, but on the other side, On the other hand, towards the end of his life, certainly he became a great proponent not only of Hindi but even of Farsi. And he wanted a totally artificial language created which would homogenize all the different linguistic groups of India and have a kind of an artificial official language. And thereby, I think he contributed really to the decline not only of Bhojpuri but all regional and local languages. Kind of linguistic chauvinism, which he displayed towards the end of his life was absolutely unforgivable. But then the fact also is that regardless of the efforts of the Bhojpuri Academy and individuals who have contributed greatly to keeping the language and the literature alive, the fact is that today there is much more being produced in Hariboli Devanagari than in Bhojpuri. And to that extent, Bhojpuri or for that matter Maithili are really remnant languages, residual languages in this region. And for instance, there are only two Maithili present in the whole continent now. One in Calcutta and one in Kathmandu, which use the Maithili script. So that script is gone, effectively is gone. Practically the same is happening to Bhojpuri. And there are some books and some pamphlets which are being popular, but half full or half empty. I would think that it's not only half empty but it's getting emptier. Third small point which I want to make is about the kind of Bhojpuri culture which is there in Mauritius, and different of course with Nepal is obvious because of much greater coming and going between Nepal and much greater updating than in Mauritius. But the really most intriguing Bhojpuri that I have experienced in Suriname, which is even more cut off from India than Mauritius, partly because it was under Dutch, therefore there was even less and further away. There the Bhojpuri is straight out of the 19th century. The structure of the language, vocabulary is similar, but the structure of the language is entirely different, and the songs particularly are songs which have a great deal of sexuality and violence. Now I wonder why.
I can't give you any answer. I don't know Suriname at all.
Two last questions, quick ones.
I just wanted to ask a question. Has there been any studies on the impact of the Bhojpuri traditional culture on the current behavioral pattern of the Bhojpuri population, in particular relating to Bihar? Do you have something in mind, or whether some studies have already been done on this?
There are studies by O. Henry on Bhojpuri culture and its influence, of course, in Bihar. O. Henry from the state, and also, of course, Krishnadev Upadhyaya, who was named the Bhojpuri missionary, has written a lot in Hindi about the Bhojpuri situation and its influence, of course, in the Bhojpuri speaking area.
Taking the violence of the Gatha tradition here, you find that it is quite striking. But what about, I mean, just giving some more information, if you have done any work on it. What about similar, let's say, traditions in other parts of the country? UP, Bihar, I mean, sort of outside Bihar, other parts. If one does that kind of comparative exercise, then can one say that, the violence in this tradition is really striking?
Yes, I told you because I compare with my colleagues. I have many colleagues who study other ethics in India, UP, Telangana, and etc. And it is obvious.
You just want to quick response on what
Yes.
that kind of
No, you don't have practiced it. I don't know how it's in those ethics. No.
micro question.
This is a very small question. So I was also wanting to know that during the course of your study, and what kind of evidence is there regarding the socio-economic, the situation, the operation of the people, the problems that they are going through? And do they express and have they expressed in form?
Well, there are two questions. First, I don't
quite agree with the person who said that there are caste problems. Well, in the world of oral tradition, there is a great link between the upper caste and lower caste. So in that world, the oppression does not come. The contrary, there is a link, and the Gathas, they exalt the power of the low caste and their martial origin. And no, it's not in that world that we will find conflict. No. What is your second question? Does it cause something in any real period, especially the material period that we're talking about? There was translated into that kind of a medium. Is it that really the lower section? Because surely, they must have continued to suffer, even then. Whether that kind of a voice is heard, and in not there, suffering, their proudness, their role in battle, and there is no question of it. They are heroes, and there is no social conflict, but they are all of low status, low caste origin people, are here, well, at that time it was even lower than now, are here to sad, laugh, and vegetable, singer, Muslim, yogi, wandering yogi, very low status people. But they will sing the renouncement of the king or the battle. No, it's not the place for socialism. No.
Captain, thanks very much. The next speaker?
Walter, Dr. Walter.
David's question and to Dee's answer about the spin-offs of Bhojpuri cultural meanings in literature and culture and religion on contemporary Bihar. A recent book by a young American historian of India named William Pinch, titled Peasants and Monks in British India, is cited specifically in the Bhojpur region, is concerned specifically with the literature and history of the Ramanandi Sampradaya, and how that cultural religious tradition gets evolved and reworked and reconfigured socially, and how it intersects with the kinds of issues that we've been discussing around this table until Catherine brought this very significant and critical element of social and cultural experience to our attention.
Actually, this very interesting paper, Kathleen. You can understand, you will not have sympathized with me, but I could not interpret by being here. And I would have rather preferred to speak on tribal languages after this study. But let me ask one thing. Last evening there were two films shown. How many of you missed the second film? Will you please raise your hand? Okay. So the first film was on culture. The second film was on natural resource. So I guess I will miss only two of my audiences at most. You can still bear with it. You are going into the mundane matters of living, which even to me appears very crude compared to the cultural setting. But so I hope we can still stick with the. How much time do I have? That would be 20 minutes. Okay. Well, I gave that in this note some most interesting problems, which are not really natural resources in the usual sense of the term. Natural resources in Bihar, immediately one comes to mind that this is being taken outside, we don't go through. I'm not going into the economic data of this nature. The state is unusually important
because again going to Buddha and that story, that this is one of the oldest states which could develop very, very complex ecological practice. In fact, this is one of the very difficult set of terrains ecologically. I can't go into the details. Be it Chotnagpur, be it Central Bihar, be it North. It just could not be settled for the kind of agriculture and other activities practice, which, but still it did because of certain complex and very highly developed organizational process. Now, I will give the background why I choose it for this seminar. Today in the world, there is a debate that where do we get these alternatives in sustainable development? And starting from this Rio Agenda, actually Agenda 21 uses this term indigenous more than 130 times, arguing that it is the complex indigenous systems which alone can give alternatives. Now, Bihar, I think, is not just important for its own resources, but it can pertain very important knowledge of complex development of production organizations, which I am sorry to say is much less understood. And most of the cases that I have given here are my different levels of studies of this complex organizational process. Since it's not possible to present all these things, I choose the one on which I did quite intense study. This is, since yesterday it is being told, the Central Bihar. Now it is understood mostly in terms of political process and to, in Viju's words, and in Buddha's period. But it was also the Magad which gave Bihar its position in the world. And it is also the Magad which brings it today as the important focus of radical communist movements. Now, I moved into this area out of my curiosity that why it is that all movements get centered into Magad. Magad was the focus of Kisan Sabha movement. Magad is also the focus of this land. And after some inquiries, I stumbled into one area that this is the peculiarity of the production organization here. Why any conflict almost very quickly becomes very intense conflict. You can understand that if there is a very standing questions of this conference before I go into this area. The process that I followed was mostly you can call oral history, but I didn't go so much into history. I listened to people considering what was very important. This is for all the 4-5 studies I did. And then I went into solid data support. Information from different sources. Practically for the last 15-20 years I have enough data to support all this I cannot present. But anyone interested on any of these things, and come with me, there are documented evidence practically behind everything. Some of these are also printed in my articles. And let me take the Central Bihar situation. What is Central Bihar's complex economy? Central Bihar is a rice cultivating area, but its rainfall is below 1,000 millimeters. It is not sufficient for rice. Secondly, this area comes as a slope from Chotnagpur down to Ganga. Slope means water should drain out very, very quickly. And once again, cultivation is very difficult. Something like rice. It should be a millet country for all purpose. Third, it has flood problems. It has, don't go into all these problems. There is nothing very peculiar to Central Bihar. Practically all the eastern regions and other regions have the challenges of settlement, which were made And only recently we have started understanding these challenges and trying to explain this. I will draw attention to one question about our understanding of the problem. Why didn't we understand so much about it? It will be a little distraction, but with the batch of historians, it will be quite interesting. This area has a system which some of you know by now. It's called contain water in this way and make rice cultivation easily. Urban irrigation is not recognized as a tank irrigation in our irrigation literature. Now, the same technique survives in Andhra. Its name is ADRI. If you go by the Indian language, one can easily identify they are the same. But India has a standard classification called tanks. Our tanks are not included in that. It is in other sources now. For the last 5-6 years after probably our kind of we have quoted in bracket other sources of irrigation are fine. Now its extent even today is something like 0.5 million hectares. And just imagine that 0.5 million hectares of irrigated area is just not understood by anyone or investigated by anyone for its source of irrigation, which would be a standard source. What can be the kind of development? And I criticize not merely the government, I criticize also most of my friends who have been active in that area, who have been politically, they are not even investigating into this kind of system. Now basically it is just not an irrigation system. If you look at the reason why it is not understood, it is basically a complex production organization by which the area was so intensely cultivated and so intensely, so efficiently saved from drought and other miseries, which will require quite a lot of investigation. Why don't we understand this? May be quite important because there may be many other regions in the country where these things have escaped our notice. Now I think I will say that this has something to do with the colonial mindset that we inherited. Now this is not a jargon. Let me just go into the exact steps. Why did it happen like that? I will compare two states, Tamil Nadu and Bihar, side by side. In Bihar we had the Zamindari settlement. In Tamil Nadu we had Rayapuri settlement. Now these two settlements are just not land. It actually makes our mindset into peculiar way. Take the Zamindari settlement, you had a Zamindar at the top. Whatever was the administration before the Zamindari system could survive behind the Zamindar at that time. The conventional development approaches. If we had to look into something alternative, these are the great laboratories of humankind. And Bihar, this is not the only case. There is a full set of such cases in Bihar, which can be tremendously important, provided that host of mindset imbibed from this Zamindari area, which starting from not only the administration, but also intellectual and academic and political activities, some are Bihar taken to that.
On the both phenomena in Nirmal's presentation on what he calls material realities of life in central Bihar, I think both of these papers have raised absolutely fundamental complexities, social and cultural and political complexities that are involved.
One, you see, I think Tamil Nadu, you see, is little different than Bihar in terms of the tradition of the tank systems.
because it goes very deep into the Tamil, historical tradition, that you see this Chola kingdom and others, you see, along with their land tenure system, they also had a strong linkage with the irrigation system, and therefore the tank system, you see, it has that heritage, very strong heritage, which continued right up to the 14th century, up to the Vijayanagar kingdom, in which you see and in Tamil Nadu the village community system has been very strong, both in terms of the land tenure system as also in terms of the maintenance system. And you see there was also an individual assigned for this particular purpose known as Kawal Karan, and you see the purpose was to distribute this water in different fields and things of this kind, and therefore this tradition, you see, has been continuing and maintained. And so only any forgotten element in Tamil Nadu is there is between, I would say, decline of the Vijayanagar kingdom and the coming of the British, and those 200 years or 250 years, I would say, a forgotten period. But yet, you see, the institution of this Kawal Karan system has been continuing, and therefore, you see, that is a specificity of the Tamil Nadu situation, which is unlike the situation in Bihar. And you see, this tank is a much more organic system as far as, and very symbiotic going with the system of agriculture in Tamil Nadu is concerned. That is, you see, one major difference which I would like to sound between the Tamil Nadu situation and the Bihar situation. Number two, another reason which I would try to hypothesize between why ahas, for example, has been neglected in Bihar and why tanks have been not so much neglected in Tamil Nadu is because, you see, Bihar has heavy rainfall, whereas, you see, Tamil Nadu, it comes, you see, you don't have the earlier monsoon, you only have the later monsoon, and therefore the necessity of water, the scarcity of water is being much more felt in Tamil Nadu than, and therefore perhaps the abundance of water does not meet the necessity of maintenance of this ahas and tanks in Bihar. I mean, that's just a conjecture, you see, which I am having. And therefore, and so perhaps they have little to do with this mindset of Zamindar system and Railway system, you see. I think the correlation which you are trying to establish, which I would, the second is that, you see, given the correlation that you are trying to establish between the non-maintenance of ahas and the, you see, the ubiquity of the present movement in this area. And I think the two things are also unconnected, because that would go with the system of exploitation of the zamindars per se, and not because of his ahas and things. These are the points which
First, I take the second part of the question, because that will be that the Tamil Nadu situation, the rainfall, etc., whatever is said, is not so relevant in the matter that I have been discussing, because Tamil Nadu is just one of the cases where this kind of irrigation exists. It also exists in Andhra, actually in slightly different form. It is existing in Odisha, MP, even in Rajasthan desert. In fact, Kharifs have all considerable attention, with certain variations in technique, with slight variations in the management patterns suitable for the locality. What I am trying to present, that ancient cultures like this has also very complex organizational pattern. I can go into much greater detail with how they use the tank bed for different purpose, how, but some of the data of these things are very important. The two areas for which data has come out is this part, Magad, that I have investigated. They investigate the Kharif area of Jaisalmer. They say that in both areas we find the catchment tank service area. And this is not confined to India also. I did some studies outside in several other countries, and this is also considered as a very standard design principle. In China, they popularized implement something on melons on the value design on the ground, that it helps people's participation. If you give a resource, this water coming from canal poured into some captive tanks for the villagers have excellent people's participation facility. Whereas if it is controlled from top, it's not possible. But at one stage they are actually popularizing this. Now of course they are also going for centralization, and that is forward. So this has very little to do with Tamil Nadu, except that Bihar belonged to Bengal presidency and primarily we have belonged to Madras presidency. So I gave the two administrative systems of two presidencies to compare. But it is the technical part. It is not a comparison of Bihar and Tamil Nadu. The plus points and the principles are always common in not only irrigation, in all natural resources. We find out viable techniques along with institutions in particular area. Coming to the second part, that the Tamil Nadu, which has a traditional heritage, etc. Before I come to reply your questions, let me draw the house's attention to the fact that the moment you talk about Tamil Nadu, you will always come out with this information, which shows the mindset difference. You cannot find this kind of set of information about other points than another one. But there will always be someone in Tamil Nadu who knows about the Tamil Nadu tanks, and they have a whole lot of studies, something meaningful, something. The Bihar tanks, which I have been writing, has little greater heritage than Tamil Nadu. In Jankas, Arthashastra has a task, Aharudaka Setu. Arthashastra has another task called Paravandi, whose distorted form is Varavandi. Where is the only area where it is still called Paravandi. And you know there is a dispute between where does Arthashastra come. Some of the Jataka stories will be like this. So Professor Sharma's books have some interesting thing. In fact, I wanted to contact him on this. That after the Ashoka and Satvahan, he writes that after they took these Janapadas, they had reorganized this in terms of ahars. He has said it in terms of food, but if it is the term ahar, then it is quite possible that the Janapadas and the story of mother will also be a story of rise of the ahar irrigation. You can have, according to his view, that all the techniques of food cereals and others were known. Then iron probably came several hundred years back. But once they came into this mainland and cleared the forest, etc., they needed a much bigger tanks and much more complex organization. And maybe that is the period which says the rise of mother, dense cultivation, highly supporting people. So it is, there are many other ways, and I won't go into the details. I have some collections of this which I don't understand much, but some tasks can easily be thrown. But if some investigation is done, it is by no means it is well studied. The Tamil literature shows, Karashima study, that the old name up to 2nd, 3rd century BC was Kalnai and Agassi. Only from the Manivedalai period, that is 8th century AD, the name becomes ADRI, which must have been derived from Ahar, or which must have been. But before that, this name did not appear. So, it is not possible to say that this was invented here or something. In fact, megaliths have a connection with tanks. Almost all South Indian tanks have a megalith connection. Maybe very, very old technique of that nature. But Bihar has equally strong traditions, which needs investigation. And it was equally integrated. It was never forgotten anywhere till the colonial period.
about the immunity of district from salmon. And I just wondered, so when does this immunity law, if you know about if you've written about the history of salmon in the region. And also the last point which was made about the decline in the maintenance of these irrigation systems, particularly being linked to the second movement of the 20s and 30s, and the way that time and time again during the Stanford movement, you see the point being made that these urban mines are being neglected, specifically because landlords are using it as a leverage during forced settlements or forced certain kinds of federal arrangements during the conflict. So this I did comment.
One thing I am quite frequently, I find the first question is that where is your support for this? And I was I am not sure. You have not asked that question. You have asked only.
When is the community law? How do you see it? You obviously mentioned that you focused on Sample Commission report and so on.
Yeah.
And are you suggesting that it will answer to about the 1940s?
No.
Kind of community?
No.
Or is that the late 19th century famine still effect?
Late 19th century famine still effect.
Right. Which is quite a
one question. Shall I read a few lines for the quotation from this? People will be interested. Though scarcity occurred sometimes in Gaya Old District, the heartland of tank irrigation has remained immune to famine till the end of 19th century. During the initial years after the countrywide famine relief was begun, the officials noted that in Gaya District there was very little relief given. About the famine in 1866 in Gaya District, the famine commissioner for Patna and Bhagalpur division wrote that the number coming forward to receive relief should have been so small when the distress has been so protracted through the failure of the crops of successive years and the high ruling prices occasioned thereby is only to be accounted for by the fact of the inaccessibility of the village depot, owing to their distances from the mass of the starving population. This is not true because under statistical accounts say that Gaya 1/3 was crop was marketed at that point, which was lost afterwards. But by the time of the next famine, 1873-74 quotation, all the local officers were convinced that no real distress need be apprehended in Gaya district. Thus, only precautionary measures were taken in the district. This is in Hunter. Then followed the famine of 1897. O'Malley in District Gazette writes, the history of the famine of 1896-97 shows how great is the protection secured to Gaya by the system of panins and ahars in a year of unequally distributed rainfall. If you need some more, I can go on.
Particularly interesting, it was 1897 famine in Chotanagpur was particularly severe. And it was comparative because it was first, again, famine was constantly talked about 1897 famine being one of the first recorded famines in the region, which they ascribed to deforestation of the region, and saying that now the region is suffering from famine similar to what was affected plains Bihar. So it's very interesting that the Gaya, you say, has not been affected even by the 1897.
But whereas immunity started to fail to some extent only from the 1920s. But it never did fail much before independence. That's the point. Both Gaya and the other Zamindari area of south, the Ramanatpuram, had surviving traditional irrigation systems and traditional irrigation organization. This is an important point I make. And the organization does not mean how the people unite. The organization means that they had the kind of property rights by which, I'll just give one or two examples, that in the dry years in tank, in a very drought year, they don't cultivate the tank command, they cultivate the tank bed, because that is the only area contains from the water. Now this is basically a complex property right system by which you can use both. And I was there
and what is happening in different parts of the world are divergent routes. In Bihar, on the one side, you have only 2% creation of new irrigation potential. because in the modern sector, with the new technology. On the other hand, the arch points have gone. The traditional systems of irrigation water management have more or less gone. The result is that we are neither here nor there. In China, on the other hand, as you said, the tank irrigation, traditional tank irrigation system has been broken up, but new irrigation systems have been created as substitutes or perhaps even as improvements. I consider them an improvement purely empirically because the ability of the new irrigation systems to sustain a greater population with greater food production is proven. I mean, today there are more people eating more food than ever before in history. So, regardless of the efficiency of those systems in their given times, there is no absolute value to be attached to them. And I think that, in a sense, the glorification, as it were, of the pre-modern, without asserting also the necessity of modernity, tends to take away from, any kind of sustained development effort. And which is something which can be very dangerous for a state like Bihar.
Yes, sir, we were suffering from the same modernization ghost. See, the argument I will proceed rather by the discussion of some of the other countries, because China, what you said, is not that kind of situation. You said they're giving up the old system for the No, they are giving up the melons on the vine design, which was after the Cultural Revolution and this was introduced. Now they are giving up, but it is not something very old. But China and the more, I think the better documented case would be Japan. But both China and Japan had not faced the kind of colonial imposition, and more or less they have a continuity in the science and technology. Now, one of the famous irrigation experts of China, Akira Tamaki, I will first give his philosophical position on this. He is very critical of the kind of modernization taken in this country. He says that over thousands of years, most of Monsoonisian people had to develop tremendous terra capital. In Europe it is not necessary, but in these areas, they have to do something to harvest monsoon in a proper manner. And so always they have tremendous amount of terra capital. And this terra capital is not to be rejected. This has to be improved. We don't forget agriculture and the capital as a knowledge behind all this agriculture of thousands of years, just because we want to modernize. And I don't
I think we have
and in all these countries, like Japan, etc., but they give us a continuation of these systems. I think you should listen to this for 3 years about it. That it's a continuation. They modernize the old systems. But here, if you have one tank, then I don't think that from the very beginning it is just one tank like this. Sometimes, some 1,000 years back, some 2-3 tanks probably were connected by a channel, a common supply channel. And this way the things have been integrating, newer and better techniques are coming up. What Japan did from late 19th century onward was integrating all these systems into specific prefectures and good diversion systems, but always at the bottom they had the captive units, then modernized, farm modernization, everything. But captive units gave the villagers say over their resources. And their argument is that if it is a direct supply canal type, then it is always controlled by the bureaucrat at the top, how much water will come. This is what supports participation, and to look into alternative methods of development, alternative types of development. It is absolutely possible, I can go on their length, that how these are modernized. These are actually modernized that way in Tamil Nadu.
I think you listen to my comment. comment was really that the situation as in Bihar, where you have surface canal irrigation, which is a sole canal irrigation system which has gone to sea. It has not been renovated, maintained.
But sorry, but that's precisely the problem with canal irrigation system.
Can you please let me finish? No,
one at a time.
well, what I wanted to say was that in this situation, there is a great deal of popular participation in agitations, demanding the modernization or renovation of the zone canal systems. There is a great deal of political participation in such an effort. Instead of focusing on that, if diversionary tactics are utilized in diverting the attention of the people from those, which is a proven technology, which has increased the productivity of Bhojpur and this area for 100 years or more. To chase technologies of the past, while this technology is going in front of eyes of people, that I think would be counterproductive.
Just a minute. There's a brief follow-on question from Benita, and after that we have 4 questions in this order, one from Kalpana, Viju, Arya, and Hila. Okay, then we'll see that.
It's a very quick reaction to what I was saying, because most of the literature now on sustainable development gives high priority to indigenous knowledge, and quite clearly what he's saying is just that we need to take into account indigenous knowledge. And the kind of canal irrigation systems we've been talking about, and Whitco, who talks about a lot of very interesting work about canal systems in Punjab, the kind of problems of stability and so on that are associated with these systems, the maintenance of these systems. So I think that they apply to what's happening in Sochal. So I think kind of re-establishing or reviving, the kind of systems that he's been talking about, to go alongside.
I attribute it to a new kind of colonialism where you guide the development.
Just read the current literature on sustainable development.
Response on that, please.
I don't remember I said anything against Son Canal. If you can get anything like Son Canal into all parts of Bihar, I will not mind. But mind you, this is happening that Son Canal is the only possible canal in that period in South Bihar. The terrains are not always feasible for canals. It also has limitations. If you have to get water into other areas, otherwise I think you are just sacrificing the rest of central Bihar for Son Canal. The other important aspect is that in Gaya they are trying a new scheme called Udarasthan scheme. I was just discussing with Mr. Srivastava that I also saw the planning situation of Udarasthan scheme. The chief engineer of Pitambur had written a note at that time that instead of digging new canals, they could have joined this Udarasthan scheme to supply to the old pine systems. Udarasthan is actually a medium project on the Falgu diversion. Now, if the whole water is diverted, all that you have to do is you divert the water into the existing set of pines. You have tremendous saving of cost. And this is basically what Japan did. They just got these head structures better and diverted it into the old systems. So this has been done in Tamil Nadu where the maps and other things exist. Here this is practically not possible because you have to get a full map of the pines, etc. And this is not done. I have seen also parallel lines. Somewhere it has been transferred. My point is that it has to be integrated, and somewhere people should know the kind of techniques. Bihar incidentally is the only state in India of which 1/3 of surface irrigation is irrigated by other sources. This is ridiculous. We just write that things are, major part is irrigated by miscellaneous. I will call it ignorance. And this is what is happening. That, and I think one should investigate this part, get integrated and develop Bihar's resources on the basis of its existing things.
Yeah, my question is actually slightly away from this debate. I just wanted to ask you to elaborate a bit on what you said. You mentioned that the upper pine system was associated with very intensive cultivation. If you could just say something about the effect on labor use of age development of the system and subsequently deterioration, and whether one can draw the connection with the kind of platform which we find essential to have a very high proportion of land that agriculture based particularly because you mentioned connection with the intensity of the current movement, which ultimately is not a movement to cultivate as much of land material. So whether or not there are connections.
First, I see a couple of clarifications from anyone. One is this famine in area, the famine of 1870 he is talking about, and they wanted to extend the permanent settlement to rest of India or rest of British India. And so, obviously Nirmal would know better. So this singling of the Gaya district as free from famine may not be so correct, but we may know better. One more, so 3 points of that. Second is that he talked about decline of irrigation in last 20, 50 years. And so what has, and evidently rice cultivation also must have fallen, or has it fallen? And has other cropping patterns have come up? Because if the old kind of thing supported rice cultivation, then has it fallen, almost 50% fall of irrigation by alpine, and final irrigation is not the same area and also only 2% as say. So what is the change in cropping pattern? And third, I want to make a little comment on this debate on indigenous and thing. I think that there is no technology which is indigenous and non-indigenous. There is continuation of technology. And one can access indigenous technology only with modern minds and modern social beings. I'll take an example from what the organic farming movement. Now, okay, it's not enough to say that all ancient exhibitors were organic farmers. Okay, because I think they didn't know the role of birds, they didn't know the role of snakes or bees, and Indian farmers are extremely ignorant of many of these things. And only I think modern minds can really access Indian technology and be something useful today. Thank you.
I hope I will make some. Please stop me. I want to make two comments first and then ask a question. First is what you said about the necessity of capital in monsoon areas for irrigation. Coming from the Netherlands, I know nothing about irrigation, but coming from the Netherlands, having lived below 5 meters below sea level for most of my time, I know that water management has been an extremely important issue in the West as well. So challenge that distinction you made there. On the debate between the modernists like Arvin and the kind of romanticism of Phoenicia, I think that is a quite useless distinction. I think saying something about the sustainable development literature, again I would refer to the Netherlands. Having lived below sea level for most of my life, this canal irrigation is quite useful, and I'm quite happy that it's well maintained. But I wouldn't buy Arvin's point about this modernism anyway. It's not about just introducing modern irrigation, although from an efficiency point of view it would be. And I think, and that brings me back to what I really want to say initially. Nemo's paper is I think about political economy. And you make the link between various present movements and the decline of that water management system. I think the only relevant question is, and I would have many questions on that, when is it that this declines? What are the reasons for this decline, and what are the political implications? I was not sure about your periodization of that. Why does it decline in the 1920s, and why is it that it declines then?
The talk was very interesting, but my only grievance is that what Catherine spoke in English, she is writing in French alone, because her paper was very scanty, and I hope that she gives us a larger picture, I think, during her talk. Thank you, Catherine. Coming to Nirmal, I start with the premise which Nirmal has taken, that correct ideas come from people. I believe that the political movements that are going on in central Bihar, they have some linkage with the people, and they tried to fix their priorities according to the people's demands and aspirations. Of course, that may not be a perfect mechanism, but generally speaking, people have their priorities. As Arvind was mentioning, this modernization of Son Canal, it has been a people's demand, and naturally the political movements active there have taken up the issues and they are agitating for that. So we have to find out why this revival and renovation of the traditional irrigation system has not become a burning issue and from the people. And if it is a burning issue, it's a burning demand from the people, then the political movement sooner or later is bound to take up. But for the last 30 years, a movement is going on, but these issues have not come to the focus. There are some problems of priorities, I believe, which I would like to Nirmal to enlighten. What are the reasons why these issues is not coming up from the people? And about the traditional and the modern, this debate, I take Nirmal's paper in the spirit that he is always trying to synthesize between what is beneficial in the traditional as well as what is beneficial in the modern sector. I take it in that spirit. If there is any other suggestion, then we can take up this traditional versus modern debate.
Not a civil engineer or irrigation engineer, but I had been to Bihar during 60s, and I came across the survey rights of all the Ahar and Pine, and there are rights on the river also. And at this particular point of the river, the fund will be created by these farmers or these villagers, and that duration is also kept. But this was going on previously very nicely. Then in our earlier development irrigation scheme after independence, the low cost schemes like beer schemes which were suitable, they were actually incorporated with Ahar and Pine. I know cases, I have read the reports that it is written that the river water will be diverted and stored in these Ahar and they will be utilized at the time of shortage. And the plots to be irrigated by those Ahar were also recorded in survey rights. But what we saw that there is a lot of change, attitudinal change among people mainly after independence. And those Ahars were cultivated. And people themselves, they just trusted those Ahars. So the planning or the technology which we try to implement, that is basically for the people, and the people are there whether they accept it or if they damage it. I felt that after independence, the community feeling has deteriorated and individualistic feeling has emerged. And on this basis, the future work of Valmiki for improving management of irrigation has shown that these things can be rectified. Our polygon research in which farmers were involved, that has given benefit. And then the experience of polygon we are utilizing in different parts of state. Now 30 channels are in the line of polygon and 3/4 are definitely 300 over in this financial year to farmer organization. And the enthusiasm and other things are very much encouraging to indicate that there is a change and improvement in irrigation sector in the state can happen. Only one thing I would like to say that water is really important for the rural population and for cultivation. This is the binding force in which the groups, different villages who were against, they have also come together and then they have acted jointly and then benefit can be achieved by others. Thank you.
Well, she gives me some scope to share my views about future development. Let me take up the polemics which
people are bothered with. I mean, if, rice cultivation has fallen. There was a slight decrease in rice cultivation during the 40s, 36, 40, but that is something like 10%. And I, in the Social Historical paper which I wrote in the beginning, I have given this data. And my point is that it has very quickly recovered. At present, after 60s, the situation is that the rice cultivation area has not increased much in Bihar. Irrigation area by surface irrigation is plus 2%, whereas groundwater irrigation has come. And we don't know. Second is that irrigation, the agriculture data is very rarely obtained. The period I am talking, 80, 86 is the last published data. Then also there are all kinds of problems. One cannot do a good statistical test to be a successful crop. In the next block, I have some documentation here. In the next block, in the next village actually, they failed because they could not maintain that irrigation in that year. The Dutch water reach, let me tell, like what I was quoting was only a quote from Akira Tamaki, who was trying to make an argument for the Asian agriculture. And he is also very aware of this part. And Dutch, incidentally, there is no such question except that we were suffering from the British, who had to bring Dutch engineers to reclaim their backyard of Cambridge. They are just ignorant of all. And I have a series of articles, particularly on this thing, that the Spanish legacy of communal irrigation in Valencia did benefit Philippines and Mexico. And then the American legacy also came. French had a different thing. They are not so ignorant. This is the worst sufferers are the British. There it is just forgotten, be it here, be it in other African countries. And now we are getting documentation about the rich agriculture systems which have been preserved. And the 1920s declaration, the decline was because the Tenancy Act, the first Tenancy Act in 1885, the Act as such does not mean anything. Unless you prepare the survey settlement records, it cannot be implemented. The survey settlement record preparation period for South Bihar was 1900 to 1920. Gaya was the last district between 1911 and 1920. So once that started, then immediately the conflicts broke out. And this is not idealizing the tenant tension, but in our studies like this Village India, there is a full set of books in which Oscar Lewis has an article on the conflicts of Village India. Everybody was liking cooperation. But he still has a footnote that irrigation works are the only works for which the feuding village can come together. So even if there was tremendous tenant conflict, that really did not broke into the sea because of the necessity of irrigation. That is what I learned. And in 1920, when this was being double started, between 1920 to 1940, and there are supports in the post-Bakassi. Correct ideas, I think, say the correct ideas come from people. I think correct ideas come from practice. This is one of the things. And even if one works in people, one does not practice everything. Irrigation area was, although the colonial government was working with people, they were not practicing irrigation. They did not have the irrigation understanding. That is what I think. Don't practice people things. The point is that the argument that which also later was being said, that in Son Canal, the people have been arguing for modernization. Now, these 5-6 case studies that I have given, I was saying one thing, that I actually talk to people to find out the need. There are many people's agitations which we pick up according to our preferences. All these are supported by people's agitation. Even now in my presentation I gave people's agitation, where Kisan Sabha is constructing her pines in 1950s. Even Janshakti is publishing report. The leadership did not pick up, and even my presentation people have not picked up that I am actually saying that this is also another part of people's demand. And there are lots of cases of such people demand. We pick up according to our people, and I have seen in Bihar, Jayaprakash Narayan having his people say this, and Srikai having his people say this, about its design alteration. And now the participatory arguments are that if the people would have been involved, it would have been in a much better and cheaper way. Which is the one thing I am asking. I think roughly that covers all other polemical questions.
My question was actually that why this decline of this dynamic system has not becoming a major political issue. I mean, whether it is just callousness of the political leadership, or because if there is a certain demand from below, that is bound to be reflected sooner or later in the political movement. If there is an active political movement, it's already linked with the market.
Demand for irrigation is a political issue, which technique is sometimes because of the climate. But I better come to Kalpana's question. Out of that you can come into this part. And incidentally, the people like us also belong to the political section, because my whole economic arguments is which I gathered from politically, and I have been documenting on Jharkhand movement's economic activity being forgotten. Some political activists at junior level who have been arguing this, and this gets forgotten. The people's alternative argument. The very important question is that agriculture labor situation. You don't raise your hand, I have to see her face. You will coming on the way. That the whole organization of tank was certainly not ideal, and in fact it is far worse, because one of the major rules of world history is that efficiency and equity, or participation and equity, these really are not going hand to hand. And some of my friends have been arguing that participation means equitable. It is not necessarily true. You can have a boss and participation. The tank irrigation, what I find, was a very some kind of wretched organization, even in usual Bihar sense. Things, I just give one example. Agriculture labor, some details I am not going. The bonded labor was a part of it. Then one thing was that women had no part in communal labor. They were restricted. One of the major reasons is that some of these things are not being tolerated by people, which the departments and engineers try to pose as the community work is heavy. Now this is not the community work within quotation. Community work is heavy basically is that there is a conflict in the role status given to different people in the earlier community. And this requires readjustment. And I particularly stress it that the productive force is not really a part of that specific organization. You can have certain variations in organizations. And if we go again with Professor Sharma's books, and go that over 2000 years, it has not been the same organization from the very beginning. There were stresses, new rules and new types of norms were defined, and then the people came for the survival activity. After 60s, this is one of the major reasons, though this is not the only reason. and the community participation has failed is basically because of the kind of oppression is not tolerated by the people with a different set of values. And unless we prepare an organization of the different set of values, it is not possible to continue. But if we want a different set of values, then we have to get these organizations, because these are the productive activities and there are no alternatives for this. And the modern efforts have been arguing this part, that even if it is very well managed, you don't give drinking water along with untouchability. But you can give the drinking water by saying that you cannot practice untouchability. This alternative forms require assertions from both sides. Those who have been fighting for culture and society should understand that they have to get economic programs in which this kind of activities are very, very important, and these are actually people's involvement activities. Whereas those who are seeing it from the other side and explaining that these are just failing because community participation has failed, should understand that this is just not community participation has failed. There is something of that. But there are many other additional things which they have to do, like property rights, like certainly don't divert the river according to the whims of officials. Let's not like give it to some other village. They have to give some assurance. There are some 6-7 points of that nature, to which I am not going into details. I think that also explains your view.
I have one-line suggestion. That if you go into the class basis of 1930s.
Yes, I discussed in there is a definite relation, and at that point, particularly in Gaya, the whole situation was just to prevent the deterioration of the pines, which actually became, as Holder and others have been particularly has pointed out, that it became the Richard Peasants organization, to which Sajanand also came to question. At that point, of course, survival of these units were also the issue of the agriculture laborers, because if this fails, they also don't get anything. But as now, this time particularly, as the relations have become very strained, and they have become culturally rather more oppressive, I think, I have no supporting data, then they are probably trying to extract more and more from laborers. Community work is failing, it has a vicious circle, is decreasing more and more. Now we just burst into the scene.
Thank you, Nirmal. We have 30 minutes for Shahbaz's paper and 20 minutes of discussion to follow that. The paper is called Local Entrepreneurship in Bihar, Social Context and Economic Constraints.
My paper on local entrepreneurship in Bihar is relatively easy as well as difficult. Easy in the sense that I don't have to say much about the entrepreneurship, that everybody know how the entrepreneurship has evolved over the years, and difficult that one has to relate the evolution of entrepreneurship in the context of historical backdrop and the macroeconomic situations that is existing at the present moment. Nevertheless, I shall attempt both the things in today's presentation. Now, my paper contains 3 components. One, quite a detailed, elaborate historical backdrop that I have given how entrepreneurship has evolved. Secondly, the current economic scenario in macro terms. And the third part deals with the local entrepreneurship. I am not dealing with the provincial entrepreneurship, with the local entrepreneurship that has evolved in the 5 districts of Bihar play. I have excluded the Chotanagpur area, but I have only concentrated in the 5 districts of Bihar play I have taken 3 from North Bihar and 2 from South Bihar districts. Out of the 5, 4 districts are relatively developed districts and 1 is quite a backward district. Now before I come to the scenario of the local entrepreneurship, I would like to give a briefly the broad historical perspective and the evolution of the entrepreneurship that has evolved in the last few decades. Now before I mention, I would like to briefly mention 2 or 3 things which were responsible in the evolution of the economic profile in this part of the country. Now the 4 factors which I feel are important. I am not going into details on this aspect because a number of things have already been discussed, but I will briefly deal these questions just to give you a broad idea. Now the first, I feel, the most important thing is the extent of British penetration in this part of the country. As you know, that Bengal, Bihar being part of the Bengal presidency, this is the place where the Britishers came first, and this was the area which was subjected to maximum exploitation. In fact, the surplus of this area was used for war of expeditions in other parts of the country, and even the deficits of the other presidencies were met from the Bengal presidency. Now, so Bihar being part of it, this area was subjected to maximum exploitation. And here, the artisans and the traders were systematically exterminated. And I don't want to go into the entire history, but these are the brief points that I would like to mention.